Lots of news today, but let's start with this on the Best Buy website. Best Buy has been the exclusive seller for Nvidia's own Founders Edition graphics cards. Well, the 3000 series cards, not all of them, but some of them, like the RTX 4080, have seen massive clearance sales. We're seeing the RTX 3080 Founders Edition listed at $420, down from a $700 MSRP, and it's been hard to even find at that $700 MSRP. Some other models seeing cuts. We're seeing the 3080 Ti cut down to $720, and the 3090 Ti down to $880. Now, if you had been here sooner, you would have seen the 3070 cut down all the way to $299. However, that one is gone. Not just listed as sold out like we're seeing on these on some of these other ones, but it's just gone. I don't see a 3070 listed here anymore for the Founders Edition cards on the website. So when they say clearance sale, I wonder if they actually mean clearance sale and these are just not going to be here anymore. In other words, are the last shipments of the Founders Editions happening? Question mark. But anyway, if you did manage to find a brand new 3080 for $420, that does seem like a deal. The 3080 Ti at $720, 3090 Ti at $880, again, not as exciting to me as seeing the $420 3080. But anyway, wanted to mention that that's here. Now, does that mean anybody's actually buying them at these prices? So I didn't know how much I wanted to get into this, but thought, if there's none of these actually in stock or very few throughout the country and they're not expecting resupply, now I'm not saying I know that, I'm saying that's a question mark, then would it make sense for Best Buy to do something like, hey, let's sell these, let's list these at massive discounts to get traffic and news coverage, like this video, to our website where people come to buy a 3000 series card, see them sold out, and then go ahead and buy a 4000 series card or one of the less, cut down price 3000 series cards. In other words, could this just be a marketing thing and very few, if any, of these were actually available at that price? I don't know, but I'd say it actually is worth checking in on if any of these did ever show up near you, because that does seem like a crazy price. Speaking of crazy prices, this one's in Japan. But apparently, according to this WCCF Tech article, an Arc A750 graphics card was listed for $150, and that includes tax in Japan, by a Japanese retailer. But I guess the catch being you had to come into the actual store and could not reserve them. So basically, this seems to me like a loss leader type of item, try to get people to come into the store. Maybe you lose money on the GPU, but then they buy the rest of their gaming PC setup, who knows. But hey, if you happen to be in Japan, I will say that yes, there's some software headaches with the Intel GPUs, but at $150, that's going to be tough to pass up if you could get it at that price. We're also seeing the Arc A750 Predator BiFrost version, which is a 16 gigabyte version of the card coming from Acer. Intel had its own branded 16 gigabyte limited edition card available, but it's again looking like, according to WCCF Tech, it dropping to $350, and that 16 gigabyte model being available from the third-party Predator BiFrost. So if you need a 16 gigabyte GPU, good luck finding 16 gigabytes cheaper than that. Although, do you need a 16 gigabyte GPU? That's the question. Anyway. So now let's get into the good old leaks and rumors. Our favorite Copite 7 Kimi at it again. We've got the RTX 4060, updated specs saying it's using a PG190 board. It's using the AD107 GPU. And if you're not aware, that's the kind of GPU die where in previous generations we would expect that to be like a 50 class card. Not really expecting that to be a 60 class card. So that could be a little bit concerning to people. 3072 FP32, in other words, CUDA cores, which, if I'm remembering correctly, is less than a 3060. Now, that doesn't mean it'll perform worse than a 3060, and it's a different generation of architecture and all that, but again, not really what a lot of people would want to see. We're seeing 8 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory. We don't see an X on there at 18 gigabits per second at 115 watts, so at least it's nice and power efficient, it seems like, and 24 megabytes of L2 cache, saying I will try to remain neutral, probably because in my opinion, it's hard to remain neutral about that. Now, if you want to see these specs, videocards.com helpfully makes these tables of all the leaked specs of the upcoming cards. So we do know the 4070 Ti specs. These are real. But then these are the rumored 4070, 4060 Ti, and 4060 specs. And again, that 4060 is looking significantly cut down. I mean, well, is it real? Who knows? Question mark. However, I will say that we are seeing an RTX 4060 laptop GPU tested ahead of schedule. This got the video got published and then taken down. It's no longer available. So it looks like they messed up their review embargo by a week because the reviews are supposed to be out on February 22nd, I believe. And but apparently videocards.com has captures of the performance results that we're seeing here and some of the info. Now the laptop GPU is AD107 and apparently does have 3070 CUDA cores. And again, this leak is 3072 CUDA cores on the 4060. Again though, the laptop GPUs are often on a smaller die, fewer cores, less power, that kind of a thing. Now, according to the video, apparently this looks to be a laptop with a 140 watt TDP. So again, this is a laptop GPU, but I just wanted to say it's interesting. We are seeing so is it possible that the 4060 laptop and desktop would actually be very similar GPUs? Or is Copite actually getting info about a laptop GPU and mixing it up with the desktop counterpart? I would kind of hope that's the case. Now, anyway, in the performance numbers, we're seeing that in TimeSpy, here's our 4060 laptop, which is paired with a Intel i9-13900HX processor. And you can see it beating a 3060 laptop, but losing to a 3070 Ti laptop. Now, kind of interestingly, it also gets tested against some actual desktop parts. So if I'm gonna like tiny, I'm out of your way, I promise. Okay, what we see here is we see our RTX 4060 laptop, and then here's a 3060 desktop card. So you can kind of see it is outperforming a 3060 desktop card. And it looks like it's performing worse than a 3060 Ti desktop card. And again, I'm telling this is in Chinese, but I'd be pretty sure this would be a desktop card because an i5-13400F is a desktop CPU, and that looks to be a 3060 12 gigabyte GPU. So, and this would be the 3060 laptop way down here, 4060 laptop way up here. In some of these games. So you can kind of scroll through here and get a rough idea of what that performance looks like. But again, this is a laptop, and laptops, vary wildly. Also, I can't tell in Chinese exactly what these games are. Although I'm sure some of you guys could translate it. I've got to get to work here pretty soon. But anyway, I think it's interesting to look at these stats compared to what we were seeing on the rumors for the desktop card, and then seeing how the performance turned out on the laptop card. I don't know. What do you guys think in the comments section? Let me know. I accidentally just deleted one of my things. It was a picture of, or was it? I don't know. Anyway, let's just move on. So we're seeing you missed out on one of my news articles. We're seeing new AMD drivers. Now, this appears to be a very big deal, at least on paper. Not only are we finally getting the unified driver for the 6000 series and 7000 series all on the same driver, but they're making some large performance claims. A whole bunch of games claiming some performance improvement all over the place, from 4% to 9% to 19% in F1 2022. But again, under certain conditions, using certain GPUs. A lot of fixed issues you could dig into. I do want to go to these slides where AMD actually did a blog post diving into more of the apparent performance improvements. I'll disappear again. So they're showing here their progress from October of 2021 to November of 2022. And then now adding in their latest release of the 23.2.1 driver. So they're showing this over time increase in performance in a lot of games. It looks like these specific results are 6900 XT and with a Ryzen 9 7900X processor. And again, they always say up to, right? So is this a particular scene in the game or a place where they had issues, or is this average? Again, it's saying up to, not average, but is this average results getting up to this depending on the scene you're testing? I'm a little worried about that word up to in AMD slides ever since their 7000 series claims. So this might need some independent testing. Maybe I'll have time to do that. Maybe somebody else will. But they are making some big claims on the improvements. Also, they're highlighting OBS support for improved encoding. This also includes support for AV1 encode acceleration on the Radeon RX 7000 series graphics cards. But they're also just talking about optimized encoding for their 6000 and 7000 series and the latest version of OBS. So AMD working with OBS to improve their encoding support, which I think is awesome. So lots of other claims here, but anyway, this appears to be a big driver update. People had to wait a long time to get it, but it looks like a big one. Now, if you happen to have an AyaNeo, little handheld gaming PC console thing, be careful of this driver upgrade because it's looking like certain AyaNeo models like the AyaNeo 2 and AyaNeo Geek, this update drops the available video memory to 512 megabytes. It looks like they have some instructions on how to avoid this issue. So maybe dig into that if you have one of those. No, we are also seeing tests of a Radeon RX 7600S RDNA 3 mobile graphics cards at Notebook Check, and this is being reported by videocards.com. Now, the specific laptop that's being tested with does not have one of the highest end processors, which could be limiting its gaming results in comparison to the other models that you're seeing it listed here against. Also, again, this being an S model, this is a low power consumption model. So there's a few results up here. I would point you to the full Notebook Check article if you want more information on the full review. But overall, these results didn't seem particularly mind-blowing to me. But again, it's it is on that lower end CPU, and I'm more interested in the dedicated GPU space myself. Anyway, we are seeing a die shot of the AD104-250-A1 qualification sample from this is from Mega Size GPU on Twitter. And so that's expected to be coming out in the RTX 4070 non-Ti. And we can see the rumored specs for that right here. But again, that's the AD104-250. And there's your AD104-250 qualification sample. The expected time frame for these being an April launch. Of course, that could change. And again, I've already gone over the specs recently in a recent video, so there's how it stacks up against the 4070 Ti, although once again, this is leaks, not confirmed specs from Nvidia. Although from Nvidia, we are seeing the launch of DLSS Super Resolution SDK 3.1.0. Now, in addition to updates to DLSS 3 frame generation, this SDK, when implemented into games, has a very interesting feature, which appears to be added the ability to stay up to date with the latest DLSS improvements. Meaning, if games use this SDK to put DLSS into their game, then as DLSS algorithm changes over time, it gets trained, a lot of times older games never get updated to the newer versions. Now, a lot of people go ahead and do that manually, but that's a bit of a headache. It's looking like this would allow auto updates to the version of DLSS implemented into the game as it changes over time, which I think is awesome. Now, speaking of other DLSS tweaks, there is a DLSSTweaks a mod available on GitHub, which I have not tested myself, but it looks like one of its main functionalities would be to take games that don't support DLAA. And if you're not familiar, DLAA is basically running the DLSS anti-aliasing algorithm instead of TAA, but running at the native resolution rather than usually when you're using DLSS, you render the game below the native resolution in order to then increase performance. DLAA actually has a heavier performance hit than TAA, but can provide better image quality than some implementations of TAA, and that can also be a personal preference thing and depend on the game. But it's looking like this allows you to implement DLAA on many games that support DLSS. Looks like along with tweaking the presets used by this DLSS 3.1, they have a list of games that they say are known to hopefully work with it. That doesn't sound too confident. They also recommend against using it on games that would have an anti-cheat, like online games with an anti-cheat, just so you don't get flagged for, modifying your game files, all of that kind of stuff. Now, in other interesting news, it's looking like Intel has dropped out of their deal with LTT for their Extreme Tech upgrade, where they would give, $5,000 worth of tech upgrades to Linus Tech Tips employees. But it looks like AMD is taking over that spot, and there's going to be some kind of AMD Ultimate Tech upgrade deal going forward with Linus Tech Tips. So that'll be interesting to see what happens. Now, Intel never required a Intel GPU as part of the upgrade. It'll be interesting to see whether AMD requires all AMD, CPU and GPU systems as part of those upgrades. Just kind of interesting to see where that goes. Now, in other GPU news, I've been reporting recently that the More Threads MTT S80 Chinese GPU has been out and starting to get tested by some non-Chinese outlets. Here we're seeing Bull Labs reviewing the MTT S80 up against a GT 1030 and a GTX 1060 in a variety of games. And as you can see here, while it does sometimes beat the GT 1030, it's not a given, and it is always losing to the GTX 1060. So not looking good there. And again, I think this is just evidence that it takes a lot of work on the software side of things to get good game support. So there you go. There's that. Now, I've been reporting on the Samsung 990 Pro SSD issues where the health drops rapidly. According to this Tom's Hardware article, there is a firmware update out now to address this issue, although it doesn't seem to fix damage or, the dropped health that has already been reported. The report stays the same, but it should stop the health from continuing to deteriorate, that's hard to say, rapidly. Hopefully that actually works. And now in other news, EK is launching workstation-grade waterblocks for Ryzen AM5 CPUs. So if you were looking for EK waterblocks for your AM5 processor, looks like they are out. And last thing I'll mention is that the Geekbench 6 benchmarking suite, according to this Verge.com article, has been launched and is supposed to better test things that you would actually do with your phone or your computer. The goal is to reflect modern hardware and applications better than the previous version. You can read some of the details, but I have to get my kids up and ready for school and get myself to school too. I hope all of you have an excellent day.